Hey everybody. So today I'm going to be talking about performing a zero-click token heist in Microsoft Teams meetings. I'll try not to spend much time on comparing it to a heist. I kind of ran out of gas on comparison pretty quickly, but that's what we're going to talk about anyways. I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. I used to be part of Tenable's zero-day research team, and since August of last year I've been self-employed, just hunting bugs, most of which have been on Microsoft stuff. But then also got a chance to go to Ponda in Tokyo in January, February, something. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, now I'm just looking for bugs that don't take a lot of work but pay good money. And I was going to use AI to generate myself, but this seemed quicker. Pretty accurate, I think. So yeah, what I'm going to be talking about is, it's really two bugs, but I'm not going to split them up too much. It was a simple reflected cross-site scripting bug in project.microsoft.com, which itself wasn't too impactful. You can find cross-site scripting bugs on all sorts of websites, and even if it's on like a Microsoft domain, doesn't necessarily mean you'll get access to anything fun. But something that we can do on Microsoft Teams, and we'll go through this, is leverage a small bug like that for a much larger impact by stealing tokens which give us access to a whole lot more. And why that matters, despite it seeming like everybody I talk to having used Teams doesn't quite enjoy it the most, is how I'll say it diplomatically. In the past like 5 years, they've absolutely trounced everybody else in terms of like actual users, which makes sense, right? It's probably already part of their enterprise Microsoft Office license, and so you're just going to start using it. So yeah, 320 million active users, which is why something that's been happening in the past couple of years are phishing, which I don't like the new terms for phishing. It's just phishing, but with phone calls. And so a very common attack lately has been attackers calling people at random on Microsoft Teams saying that they're the IT department, and then asking them to double-click stuff and installing malware directly, which is crazy that it works, but apparently it works enough to be a very large problem, which you'll get a little bit more access with that, but failing that, if they don't double-click something, something like the attack I'm about to show will be also pretty useful, because all you need to do is get in a call with somebody or have them click a link, but a call is nicer because they don't have to click anything. So brief run through of what we're going to be doing. The screen on the left is our victim with the big V there, and the screen on the right is the attacker. So there's joining a call as a guest. So for instance, if you're hiring somebody and you've never spoken to them before, you just have an open job application, they said pretty good, you let them to the call, so you're admitting them, and that's all you had to do, basically. And they'll immediately be able to run a payload, which you see a little spinning circle there. That's the JavaScript running. And what that is doing in the background is grabbing the access token for graph.microsoft.com. It could do it for SharePoint or Outlook or Teams. And it's grabbing that token and sending it back to the attacker. And with that, depending on how you have your permissions set up in Teams, how your admins are tracking that kind of thing, my test environment is basically wide open. You can do anything with it. But you should be able to get access to their Outlook because it's linked by default to Teams. Their Teams messages, you can read messages as them, send messages as them, as well as their SharePoint documents, because that is also integrated by default with Teams. It's how it handles files and attachments. And so that being available to somebody who just joins a meeting seems pretty bad. Luckily, I'll stay at the outset too. Microsoft has fixed this, but there might be some ways to maybe get around those fixes or still abuse it, depending on the situation. So a quick look at Teams apps. The way this works is through the Teams applications. So when you're using Teams, and you want to look at OneNote or Excel or whatever the integrated ways of working with those apps. And if, well, you might not have noticed then, but you'll probably notice next time you open one, is that Microsoft Teams isn't the same as Excel, and they're not necessarily asking you for an authentication when you go to use the file system Teams or open an Excel document. And it's like, okay, well, then how does it know who I am on Excel? The way that works, usually it'll pop up one of these dialog windows. So this dialog window is for Microsoft OneNote. And you can view that in Teams meetings as well when you share a meeting or share an application in a meeting that happens. So the way that that's working in the manifest for the Teams, I'll go into the JavaScript side of it in a second, but so this is what the permissions for these teams look like and how it's organized. This big old string here is the ID for Microsoft OneNote, the application within Teams itself. Two things we're going to keep in mind for the rest talk are the valid domains and is full trust true. So the valid domains are basically saying those dialog windows that we just saw, like this one and this one, the domains which they're allowed to open and then use within Teams are all of these domains here listed under their application. So for OneNote, any subdomain of OneNote, it can open that up in the screen and it'll still be authenticated, still be allowed to access things. Is full trust true will be a little bit more important in a second, but basically that's saying we trust this application to use the full feature set of Microsoft Teams and communicate with it openly. I'm going to come back to deep links actually, because I'm going to worry about time a little. So what I want to show right away is how those dialog windows authenticate to the main Teams window. So what happens is if you have an iframe, and if you're lost in the sauce for like JavaScript and don't know much about it, don't worry about it because it'll be obvious when we demonstrate. But the way Teams dialog windows interact with the main window is via JavaScript post message. Usually it'll be the Microsoft Teams JavaScript SDK, which only fully trusted applications can use that to do stuff like get auth token, which sounds like a great function. But what that's actually doing, and the tool I'm using in these next screenshots is from Franz Rosen. It'll show any JavaScript post messages that are going between an iframe and another frame on a website or application. So here we see the dialog window for OneNote. It's opening up there. And we can see these messages down from Franz Rosen's tool. These are post messages between this dialog frame and then the main Teams frame. So what it's saying is I want to initialize, and then the big Teams is responding with a whole bunch of settings. And the next step is this. The OneNote little dialog window is saying I want to get auth token so that I can authenticate to Teams and start using, or authenticate OneNote and start using OneNote features. And big Teams window, because that's the thing that's already signed in, says, okay, here you go, here's a token to log into OneNote, which is great because it means you don't have to sign in again anytime you're using a new application within Teams. But that can be abused in the case that somebody has a cross-site scripting bug within Teams. So, to put that together with a one-click, I skipped over the deep links. It's not super important, but there's a method in Teams of linking to another application in Teams, and if you click that, it'll open it up. So what happens when you have a cross-site scripting bug and send somebody that link? If they click it, it will execute your cross-site scripting payload. And so what that can do if we create a payload to abuse this is just a function saying if I get an event, which would be the communication between the frames, if I get one of those events, I'm going to send whatever data I get to the attacker. And then we create a listener that says run that. And we do, like I said, the JavaScript post messages. We're going to initialize, like we saw with OneNote. And then we're going to get an auth token. And we can make this argument right here. Right now it's team.microsoft.com. That can be graph.microsoft.com or Outlook or whatever you're trying to get access to. But when that runs, in the context of a user who's using it and clicking that link, it's going to take their tokens and send them to you. this was an example deep link. The way that this works is if somebody clicks this link, it would open this valid domain and run the payload. In my example, this would have been project.microsoft.com, but it's whatever you find it on. And then here, when somebody clicks that link, what's happening is their Teams client is sending this request to Microsoft Login. And it's getting, for this example, graph.microsoft.com has a hilariously large scope of all the things that it can do, which admittedly, again, is because my test environment is like, you're an admin, you can do literally anything you want, but it's, for normal users, it's still pretty big. And then it sends that token to the attacker, which is just this here. So we're getting this from their Teams instance that's sending it to us. And then with that, here's just an example of what we can do. graph.microsoft.com/me/messages. That's my email. That's just the email of the user. Like it's pretty simple, pretty easy to use. The only limitation is that the token expires within like 2 hours, but in that time you can programmatically have downloaded all the emails and all their attachments and files and what have you. So clicking one link, not very fun, not very cool, but luckily Teams meetings exist. So in Teams meetings, you can, I'm sure people have done this, but you can share an Excel window or a whiteboard or PowerPoint, etc. That uses the same dialog windows that we just saw, like the same little dialog window, like the same mechanism works for those. And so the same permissions work for those as well. Now, what you can do is when the sharing actually happens, and I hadn't seen this documented anywhere else, so it was kind of weird to figure out, but something that happens when you share an app within Teams when you're allowed to is it makes this request called add modality, and then it does a whole kind of bunch of junk. The only thing we really care about is the content sharing identifier, which ends up being a base64 encoded string. It looks like garbage. Decode it, and it's this. And this was that unique identifier for OneNote that we saw earlier. The rest of this, it's an extensible app that needs to be there. This doesn't really matter. But the URL, turns out, is just a straight up URL to any valid domain, like we saw in the app manifest before. And something about that, with the app manifest, we saw the wildcard, so like star.onenote.com, star.microsoft.com. That means it can be any .microsoft.com subdomain, some of which are more vulnerable than others. So something to keep in mind, and we'll see after. So, like I said, the host victim is allowed to share apps, usually, depending on your permissions. Guests can't, but that doesn't stop them from sending the request that we just saw. For whatever reason, Microsoft did fix other parts of this, but this isn't something that, I think it was just like, that's the way it works and that's the way it's going to work kind of thing. It is a feature. So, technically, even if you don't have a cross-site scripting, you can go share an Excel app with somebody if you want to, that you're not allowed to, but I don't know what good it would do, but could mess with them. So, we're going to do a little video demo here of what that looks like. Is that working? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to pause some places here. Can I move this? Yeah. Okay. So like we saw before, the guest on the right is just joining via meeting link. So like I said, you're interviewing somebody for a job that you've posted. There's not a really high barrier to entry there in terms of like who you're going to let into a meeting and who you're going to keep out. So they're just joining. The guest attacker is joining a meeting. You let them in. And they don't have the option to share an application, like I said, they can't do it, and I want to stress that this, a few moments later, is mostly because I'm stepping through some things manually. You could automate this and it'd be really quick. I just didn't want to step through and show the manual process because it doesn't really matter. You could make it automatic and immediate, so as soon as you join the meeting, happens right away. But yeah, that's them preparing the payload. It only takes a second. And then as soon as they send it, that's me clicking send. You'll see a little spinning ball. That means it's trying to share the app but the app pointing to JavaScript, which is just sending, this is the attacker's window, receiving the messages that contains tokens from the victim. So all they had to do was let somebody in, and then all of a sudden, the person could read their emails, their files, etc. Yeah, no. No, not necessary. Where am I here? So, the fix. Like I said, I found the initial cross-site scripting bug in project.microsoft.com. That was fixed. It was a duplicate. Somebody else had already found it. It was a very simple cross-site scripting bug, not much impact on its own. And OneNote, which was the app I used to do this, because star.microsoft.com was in the valid domains, they fixed that. I said to Microsoft that you should, maybe, because like when you're opening OneNote, you only really need to open like maybe 2 pages, like OneNote.com, or there's an Office.com like launcher for OneNote. Other than that, I can't see the reason to be so permissive with these valid domains. And I think they agreed because they removed all of the star.whatever from the app manifest. And they've done that before. I've reported similar bugs before, where you could point to star.dynamics.com or what have you, which allow like user-hosted content, so it was much easier to do an XSS. You could just upload one yourself and then point to it. But Microsoft fixed that so that they're not as permissive. That being said, this can still technically be done if you do go find a cross-site scripting bug on one of these valid domains for one of these applications. It's still very much possible, but it relies on you finding one of those bugs, which can vary in difficulty depending on the domain. But there are around 100 domains that are part of valid domains for trusted applications. And I think, yeah, around 20 of those are wildcards, so like star.office.com, star.microsoft.com type. So that really opens up the scope. So if you're a bug hunter or a red teamer and like happen to have one and don't have a great use for it right away, this might be useful to you in terms of getting access or further access within a Teams organization. Yeah. And ran a bit quick, but any questions on that? Yeah. Sure. So that's actually a great question. Like how you can save yourself from this type of situation. I think some Microsoft people did a talk right before mine, and I think they're Entra ID people, so they might have a better idea of this. I usually just go about finding bugs and then put it out of my mind once gone, but I did do some cursory look into it. And so when the actual request is happening, so when you're trying to steal a token, that is like it's a non-interactive sign-in request from Microsoft Teams services. You could maybe be making alerts on those, as well as like, I think there are, and I'm not sure if you have to pay extra for it, but the ability to lock access tokens to specific devices or like specific users, but like defined in like a sort of zero trust way, where it's like, well, this user shouldn't be accessing this access token from Russia or China or wherever, what have you, right? So I think there are programs within Microsoft to do that. I don't know specifically, but I think they do exist. Yes. Well, yeah, absolutely. And like something I wanted to test was, and maybe you can have, I didn't turn this on because it's very expensive, but audit logs on things like graph.microsoft.com, because the non-interactive login won't be from the attacker. It won't even be from where they are, because the login happens client side for the victim, and then it sends that token to somebody else, right? And so you would have to be logging access outside of just the non-interactive logins. You'd have to be logging it for whatever services they're trying to access. So. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think there are ways, but you have to ask like a better Blue Team Azure Entra ID kind of person. Any other questions? Yeah.
I was just going to follow on the conditional access policy.
Oh, okay.
Zero trust thing.
Okay. Yeah. Sweet. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't sign up for that. No, don't listen. No, definitely go to this talk if you want to learn more about that. That's sweet. Because it takes all kinds. There's people that find bugs and don't know anything about Blue Team, and then there's people that actually know a lot about all of it. And go see that talk. Anybody else? Questions? Yeah.
For the victim organization, are they allowing external teams, so like guest users and whatnot? That's what stipulations behind this work.
I think it would be, but I'm trying to imagine a scenario in which you're not allowing like external users for something like a hiring call, right?
Because it looked like on the attacker side, you would require URL. So
yes, it was running by URL. Yeah, they weren't part of the actual organization. It was just a full-on guest. It can be anything you want. Graph is just a really good go-to because through Graph. So for those that don't know what graph.microsoft.com is, it's basically like a one-stop shop in terms of like API for a lot of Microsoft services. So even if there aren't APIs on like say some other Microsoft service itself, you can access it through Graph. Like I accessed emails through Graph, not Outlook, even though you could request Outlook and access that API as well. And like, I know I skipped over a bunch of the more like just JavaScripty annoying stuff in the middle there, but if you want to know more about that, just feel free to talk to me after. And the slides will be up, and I might publish a longer form blog on it, but anybody else? Yeah. I don't think so, but I wouldn't know, honestly. Yeah, no, like I reported it to them. They fixed the cross-site scripting bug in project, and then they reduced the manifest like valid domains there, and that was it. That was the last I heard about it. But what I will say is like that the vishing requests, like just sending somebody a call and saying, "Hey, please install this," that is happening a ton in the wild. So that this is a little more complicated, and I didn't include everything that you would necessarily need to do here. I included pretty much all of it. You'll be able to figure out if you went and did it, but there's some things I left out, so it's not like plug and play easy. I've run into trouble with that in the past. I think one of the bugs that we found at Tenable for route stuff is now like one of the main loans used in like Mirai.net, which is cool in one way, doesn't feel as great in another, so it's like a toss-up, right? Anybody else? Any? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, nice. Of course, yeah. Yeah.
From a hiring perspective, accounts, I'm not going to use my personal first last name at company.com.
Yes.
Especially Verizon.
That's actually a great idea, honestly. Yeah, that's sweet. That's a really good idea. Yeah, I don't know if everybody heard, but like the saying for interviewing external people, especially with the rise in North Korea hackers just getting sweet jobs at places a lot, it seems, lately. When interviewing people, don't be using your like actual organization account, use a different account. Perfect. That's great.
The whole thing of people getting called, pointing, clicking, is this not just a reason why you need this codec to listen to this file?
Yeah, it sounds like yeah. I mean, I can't speak to the vishing stuff much because it seems impossible that somebody out of the blue would contact me and tell me to install stuff. But like honestly, if it's an IT, they look enough like my IT deck and it's targeted in the right way.
You don't deal a lot with end users.
No, certainly not. No, thank goodness. No, no, no. No, I'd be awful at it. Anybody else? I think we have time for like maybe one more.
This is for teams who tried this similar approach like Slack or any other large.
I haven't. I'd be surprised. Like this is very specific to the way that Teams works and like its auth model for like its first party apps works. But who knows? Yeah, could be fun. Cool. I think that's it. Thanks very much, everybody.